Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interviewed Jim Calloway, retired director of the Oklahoma Bar Association's Management Assistance Program and winner of the American Legal Technology Lifetime Achievement Award, whose 3 decades of teaching lawyers to run better practices has shaped how solo and small firms work across the country.
Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm thrilled today to have on Jim Calloway, who is the retired director of the Management Assistance Program at the Oklahoma Bar Association. He has been a leader with legal technology for close to 30 years now at the ABA. He has also taught, obviously, many thousands of us over the years about how to employ legal technology well. And I'm really thrilled to have you on today.
I am honored to get an invitation and I'm excited to see what I have to share. It's been approximately a year since I've retired now, so moving right along.
Well, I'll also mention that, you were the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award at the American Legal Technology Awards this past year. So congratulations again on that.
Well, thank you. That was quite an honor. I have a lot of pictures from that night, and I'm very, very excited.
By the way, for those watching, we have one coming up again this year in Boston, again in October. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you can make it again, Jim, if possible.
I have 2 conferences scheduled in Boston the same month. So.
Oh, wow. I mean, Lifetime Achievement, it's been over 30 years. You had a practice before you became a teacher of law practice management. And there's just so many stories and so much experience that I know you have to share. And like one thing that I talk to my audience about that I love to do is to get into people's origin stories. Well, let's start with this. You're currently sitting in Norman, Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier, like, it's pretty darn hot out there.
It's a hot day in July in Oklahoma.
And pretty much everywhere right now this summer. Were you born there?
I was born in northeastern Oklahoma in a small town. My father was a state game ranger, and so we were near a local lake, and so it was an interesting time to grow up. One of those towns where everybody knows everybody, where the women of the community wouldn't hesitate once you got to be a teenager to stop you on the street and say, "Didn't see you in church, Jimmy. Where were you?" But it gave me a good background, and then I went to undergraduate at Northeastern State College in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, very close by college. And it was really the right decision for me. I could have gone to OU or some other schools, but it kind of allowed me to do more things. I was able to be the editor of the school newspaper, not the editor-in-chief, but one of the editors on the school newspaper. Also ran for and was elected to vice president and president of the student senate. So in any other school, you couldn't make that big change from journalism to politics, although I see people doing it all the time now. And then I went to law school at OU. It was an easy decision for me because I'm a big OU football fan. So I finally got to go to all the games. Really, I think as I started practicing law, my first job was with a large firm for Oklahoma, and we did mainly commercial litigation and banking. And it just wasn't a good fit for me. And I, at the time, probably should have been more patient, but it was clear I was going to carry other lawyers' briefcases for 5 or 6 years before I got to do much of anything, And so I saw this ad in the Bar Journal. I had by then set up as a hobby a computer bulletin board, the Barristers Club, I called it, back in the old dial-up modem days where people would dial in. And then I saw this job advertised in the Bar Journal. It's like, I would be perfect for that job, but I'm not an insider at the bar, so there's no reason I'm going to get it. So my strategy, Tom, in this interview was actually to tell them everything I thought the program needed to do, because I assumed I wasn't going to get it. So I was trying to get all the stuff I wanted to be done by the program.
Yep.
And got a second interview and then got hired for the job. So did that for, like I say, almost 28 years, 20 something like that, or 29 years. And it was interesting. It was a big change going from running a small firm to trying to help everybody in the state.
Right. Well, Jim, you packed everything in there, so I think we're done now.
Okay, great. Appreciate the invitation.
Well, let's go back, because there's a lot to unpack there. The first part of it is I would like, can you paint a little picture of What was it like growing up in that small town? Like, how many people were there? What was the look and feel of it like? Was it like a wooded area? Was it more of like like you had a main street? Like what was the
There was definitely a main street. I will say I graduated with a class of 60 students, but the only way we accomplished that was sending about 12 buses out into the Cookson Hills and various rural areas to bring them to Vian. So it was definitely a small town, Vian, Oklahoma. Like I say, it was different. It was at that time we didn't really have as much access to the rest of the world. You know what I mean? Had three network television stations, didn't get cable till a while after that, and whatever. So, but there were a lot of really good people, and I don't have any bad things to say about my bringing up.
do you come from from a big family? Was there a lot of early influences, people that like kind of set you in this direction, or do you think it was just something naturally came together? Like,
I was an only child. I was one of those, who was the valedictorian of my high school class, and national merit semifinalist and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I wanted to do something different. And my father was convinced I was going to be a doctor. I'd had some health problems during my youth, and did not want to have a job where I went to offices where sick people were all the time. So I just started looking at attorney by default. And then because I did speech and journalism and all those type of things, it seemed like I was well prepared. I'm going to tell you, if you've got somebody in your world going to law school, have them take a journalism class. Because if they're going to write essays, get training at writing it fast and right.
that's an interesting point because there are a few things in journalism, right? It's about getting to the truth. It's about the facts and what you not just what you know to be true or think is true, but what you could prove. And so that does sound like a pretty good basis for the law.
It was exciting. And law and journalists really, we do investigations. We do lots of similar things. Now, it's changed a lot. As we know, the media and journalism is changing a lot now. And then I guess if I was to talk about my professional experiences, though, really, when I went to law school, I knew a couple of lawyers from the local county seat, but I didn't really know what I was getting into, or didn't have any family in the law or anything like that. I didn't hate it as bad as a lot of people did. Now, I don't think anybody really enjoys their first year of law school, if but it was great. We had a lot of they didn't do much about legal tech then. Now OU Law School is well known for their legal technology offerings and all that type of thing, but we didn't do that. Now, we were during my year, we got a Westlaw terminal in, so we were allowed to go use it in the
Nice.
libraries. So we got to see the future in that regard.
Well, before law school, you said you went to Northeastern,
Yes.
right? What did you major in there?
I was going to have a double major in political science and journalism. And at that point, law school is actually a good degree for people when you get to politics. That's changed a whole lot. After I got accepted to law school, I decided I did not want to put myself through the history of the press, a 4-hour class that you had to write a long paper on. So I technically only graduated with a journalism degree and a bunch of minors.
Well, it sounds like it was great preparation for law school, and so when you were in law school at University of Oklahoma, was there any particular thing in mind that kind of caught your interest, or maybe there was a professor that really like made an impression on you?
We had a pretty good faculty. I have to say, like I say, it was only really the second or third year I started the first year I was just like heads down and, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into and whatever. And then, of course, of my friends, the first semester, 3 of them made the law review, and I didn't, which was unsettling. And then I saw that I just missed it. So I pulled it together the second semester and made the law review. So that was good.
Well, I'll share with you that I had the same experience in law school. Like first year was terrible. It was just a real grind. I think a lot of people had that same experience. And then second and third year was fantastic because you could actually open up after the minefield of first year.
I remember a lot of hours sitting there going, please don't call on me. Please don't call on me.
So when I talk to a lot of people that are lawyers, there's usually two routes where they go to law school. One is that I didn't know what to do with what I had as an undergrad, and then I went to law school make a living. And the others are, born esquire, where they just come out
Right.
and they hey, you can argue really well. Maybe you should be a lawyer. And it sounds like for you that it seemed like a combination of that. Like you are a great communicator, and
Thank you.
I'm sure you were back then too. And then like having the ability, like the capability, along with the opportunity, sounds like that's what led you to law school.
I will always credit luck. It's an important factor in all of our lives. But yes, I think that's a good analysis.
So then after that, you said you went to a fairly large firm.
Like I said, I didn't have any complaints about that firm, but I just didn't see me having that lifestyle. I mean, that was kind of what it was about. And, once you get kind of that attitude, it gets harder to, bill 1,800 hours a month or whatever you need to bill.
Well, not saying anything bad about the experience, but like what was it that was the misfit, like the lack of fit for you for that lifestyle?
I think probably like many young lawyers, I had an overestimation of my ability to do things sometimes. And so I really wanted to do more exciting things. And, we had one case where I had to research the different mechanics and material means lien law and all the implications of it in Oklahoma because we had a project with 500 mechanics liens filed against it or whatever that we were foreclosing. So they were good about learning how to teach and research and whatever. I decided after a year I wanted to go ahead and open up my own shop. Also decided I'd move back, open that up in Norman, so I didn't have to commute to Oklahoma City. Norman is a great community to live in. It's a university community. There's lots of all the things that are associated with that. But what I ddidn't appreciate at the time, and now I understand, is a whole lot of people that don't know what they're going to do when they graduate law school end up setting up a practice in the town they're in. so that was always an interesting thing to see these new law firms start and then kind of fold after a year or two. Like I say, I did a lot of the courts of broken promises, I called them, the divorce courts and the bankruptcy courts. That was what I did a lot of for consumers,
It was Calloway and Parrish, right?
A little bit later it was. At that point, it was just me as a solo, and then we bought Parrish and I bought the building. So yeah.
And just for everyone watching, like University of Oklahoma College of Law, that's in Norman, right?
Yes.
So interesting. Like, so you basically you cut your teeth at a larger firm. You found that you wanted to kind of do your own thing, be in charge, and
Be with people too. Let me add that. That was the only able to talk to clients when you have supervision really tended to bother me pretty quick.
yeah, I mean, if you're an associate, you might be like in a room buried with files and books and stuff, and not get to see anyone. And clearly, you have a real knack for people and charisma and being able to connect with people. And I think that was probably not put to good use at a big firm like that.
Thank you.
The question comes to mind is like how law practice management comes up because you have some experience. How did you learn of that opportunity?
It's really interesting because like I said, I was just intrigued by the computer thing. I guess my most formative thing in my youth was probably that I had asthma and had to stay in a lot during the summer. And I read like every science fiction book you could imagine in my youth. So when they started talking about the internet, I already knew what that was going to be. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I had all of that. So we set up that computer bulletin board. My wife was gracious enough to let me buy for a second consumer phone line in the house so I could run the computer bulletin board on it. And then I joined this thing called the Oklahoma City PC Users Group and went to the first meeting and found it was all a bunch of old guys like me. I thought it'd be all young people, that.
Yeah.
And so then we just started going. So it just became something I was very interested in. I realized the bulletin board gave me a little bit of credibility that otherwise you wouldn't have. And then I just saw the ad in the Bar Journal that they'd decided independently they were going to set up a program like this. And so I just put in my resume and interviewed for it. And I'm really sure I got the job because I was so no pressure. When you know you're not going to get the job, there's no pressure.
But from what you mentioned earlier, it sounds like you really there was like a brain dump essentially what they should do, and the fact if I was on the other side of that interview, this guy has the vision of like what we're to do, and we're not sure where to start, and he's already coming in the door with with this. So that must have been extremely impressive and hit the ground
The
running.
committee chair mentioned that actually.
Yeah. Another thing just to go back to is like being on the bulletin boards early, getting in early, learning how this stuff works, getting a feel for it, it pays dividends, right? Because like when you come into conversations like that interview, it's luck, but it's also meeting, preparation and opportunity because you had that going for you and you understood where things were going.
We always talk about futurists and visions of the future and all that. And some of it, if you had a real narrow vision, you can use it to make a lot of money. I kind of more had the general vision that technology is going to be a dominant factor. And again, this year that I was at the big firm was a debate about whether lawyers should have computers on their desk or whether that was unprofessional. You know what I mean? So that kind of shows. And so, yeah, we did all our stuff by dictation, dictate everything down to the typing pool, and got good at that after a while too. So that was good.
The parallels are crazy. But why was it, if you remember, like why was it back then that some lawyers thought it might be unprofessional to have a computer?
Okay, this is the kind of thing I'd have to watch myself if I still work for the bar, you know. But I'm convinced a lot of it was older established lawyers didn't want to change. Once you let anybody but a secretary, any lawyer, have a computer on their desktop, it was showing the future that lawyers were going to do that. And I understand if you had 3 or 4 years left to retiring, you probably wouldn't want any major change, at that point. But yeah. I heard more convoluted explanations as to why lawyers shouldn't use computers. But, all of a sudden, legal research moved to using computers and all these other things happened, and it became really obvious. Yeah. But I still dealt with lawyers even 8 or 10 years ago. Their system in the office was they printed out the email, brought it to the lawyer. He handwrote his response on the email, and they typed it out and sent it back out. So.
Look, you've been doing law practice management for many years now, and I'm sure you've been dealing with that throughout the years of like trying to deal with that holding back by lawyers to learning new things because they've always done it a certain way. I think one thing that would be extremely valuable for you to share is that there's no secret to it, obviously, but what is it, do you think, that draws people out, that makes them more comfortable to take on the unknown and to try new things?
I really think it wasn't just that these lawyers were curmudgeons who didn't want to deal with the future. There were also lawyers who had things packed up on their desks that they were backed up on their desks that they needed to get done. It wasn't like they were sitting around not doing anything. And so trying to get busy people's attention is really what it is. And the way I approach it in law offices when I go talk to lawyers is say, I know you set your priorities for work. You've got to set priorities for developing your practice now, because we're about to come to a time where things are going to change. And a lot of lawyers are just used to the staff coming up and saying they want to make a purchase, and the lawyer says no, save $500 today. And then if enough staff come up, or if one of the other lawyers gets on board, maybe you consider it. And so I think focus on spending X hours a week just on developing your practice. Just on, can I do things that are better for my clients? Am I using the same fee agreement with a blank line on it that I fill in my hourly rate on, which must give clients a little bit of question about why am I proposing things that way? Yeah. Somebody else get a different rate. So I think all of us, if you can only get 5 or 6 things done in a day, let it try to be the most important 5 or 6 things. And that sounds easy, but it's not, as we all know.
Yeah, it's hard enough just getting through the day sometimes.
Right.
Through the years, are there any examples that you could think of when you've kind of broken through, like to a lawyer, that you've been talking to law practice management about, or talking about technology, or doing new things? Like, is there any experience that stands out to you about when you've broken through?
One of the things that I did, we have 77 counties in Oklahoma. Each county has its own courthouse and its own county bar, if you will.
Wow.
And so one of the things I did was focus on going out and talking to those people for their county bar meetings. And they loved that. Some of them were rural lawyers. It was hard to get somebody from, to drive over and whatever, but it was my job. I was happy to drive over, And so I talked to them. And then, of course, I guess probably the most formative experience I had, I have to say this, was ABA Tech Show. ABA Tech Show was where I met all of my people, and I think that's the experience a lot of people have when they go to Tech Show, especially those from law firms. That, where are all these people? I've been trying to talk to them, And so I put on for many years, managed for our bar for many years, a successful solo and small firm conference, all basically stealing the way Tech Show did it. Bring in a good Tech Show speaker, pay them a little bit, 60 tips. Yeah, that's at every conference. You start working through these things. If I get to do a pitch, I'd say, if you've never been to ABA Tech Show, you should Google it and look at it, because it's a pretty phenomenal outline of programs with a lot of great speakers. And the best stuff at Tech Show normally happens outside of the classrooms.
I absolutely agree. Like it's a lot of those conversations in the hallways where you get to see like you said, like the community of people that share the same kind of interesting legal but nerdy interest in doing things better. So you mentioned that you put together this conference in Oklahoma, and what was that like? Was that a real challenge? Like, did people initially just flock to it?
Okay, boy, I don't know how you knew to ask that question, but we had one of the most famous speakers on law practice management. It wasn't technology at the time. Cancel on our solo conference a few months before it was going to happen. He was like the keynoter or whatever. And he didn't think he'd agreed. He said, I'm not going to be able to accept your invitation, but that was all fine. So we're at the Board of Governors meeting, and the committee for the Solo and Small Firm Conference Planning Committee, and I'm sitting back in the back. I've been working there 2 or 3 months. Says maybe a little more than that. Says, well, we're going to have to cancel the Solo and Small Firm Conference. This guy's backed out on us, and we only have a few months to put it together. And literally, the bar president says, well, we just hired Jim Calloway. Shouldn't he be able to do something like that in the board meeting? Okay. And luckily, while I didn't know anything about the mechanics of putting on a conference, we did have our CFO had put on many annual meetings and many other kind of events. And so he was able to kind of help me with, negotiating with the venue and all that type of thing. Of course, my first one, the venue was already done. So we brought in, some famous names. I think that first conference brought in either Bruce Dorner or Ross Codner, some names only you'll have to be a certain age to remember, but they were great. And Ross really taught me that lawyers have to listen to a ton of boring stuff. If you can be entertaining and make them laugh a couple of times, they'll retain your information better than other people's information.
Yeah, there's a lot to it that's, for all of us. It's storytelling, it's capturing people's imagination, and the technical part, you need that as kind of a foundation, but if you can't get it across to people, then they're not gonna hear you.
That's right. That's right. I'll tell you, my favorite story happened my first month in the office when a gentleman called me up and says, oh my God, I've been working for a brief all day and now the whole thing has gone blank. I don't know what to do. I said, you didn't have it saved? No, I forgot to save it. Da, 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 da. And I literally sat there on the phone with him and said, hit Control Z. Did anything happen? Hit Control Z again. Hit it again. And all of a sudden he went, oh my God, it's all back. So I think
Wow.
that guy thought he got his consulting value out of that, even though it was a simple thing.
That's so funny. It actually reminds me of the that story that people tell about, the electrician who came over, right? And hey, can't turn the power on. Not sure what's going on here, but all of this stuff is at stake. And if only we can get the power on, and the electrician just walks in, flips a certain switch, everything comes back on, and then gives them a bill for, like, let's say $1,000 or something like that. And they say, "Oh, well, why? It only took you 2 seconds to do this. Why am I paying you $1,000?" And it's because of the value that you deliver.
Right.
People, when they just don't know, and you can provide them that insight like you did about Control Z, and just like undoing what you did, it could just provide like a, like not just getting the brief back, but that emotional relief of not worrying and feeling like everything is just gone. There's a lot of that right now, when it comes to
Mhm.
AI, because of your, like experience and with everything that came before, which is pretty much the same thing. It's just cycling through again. What do you think about AI?
I think that the implications are unknowable at this point, that they're going to be profound. I wish we had more regulatory bodies looking at this. Looks like we're going to have to depend on the EU to do those things. But clearly, AI has the potential to relieve a lot of our busy work. I'm probably one of the least knowledgeable people on AI you've had on this podcast. There's a lot of different lawyers with a lot of different levels, and sometimes they just need help. You know what I mean? And like I say, often I had lawyers that call me all the time. I'd teasingly call them my frequent flyers, because it was a free service. Didn't hurt to call them all the time. Like I said, I think the dealing with all the different types of legal personalities, the way that lawyers deal with things, the way that lawyers often have, marital problems because they're too blunt at the wrong times, and that type of thing. And so I think I'm really glad I had the year in private practice. If I'd have just gone to this job from the year with a big firm, I wouldn't have had the understanding of how street lawyers work.
So getting the experience on the ground, like actually doing practical, real stuff, helps to inform everything else.
It does. And back in the day, I mean, I was sitting in the back of the courtroom in Norman, Oklahoma, waiting for the judge to get finished so I could get an order signed. And I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on up there. Goes, Mr. Calloway, can you come up here? And they had a guy who was trying to plead guilty pro se who didn't need to be pleading guilty. And so the court appointed me to represent him right then and there. We had like 8 court appearances over a year because the DA didn't like that they were having to climb back from what they'd got. It took a while. And I got paid my $500 as a court appointment fee. That kind of experience, that's real world experience. First, having to explain to the client why he doesn't need to plead guilty, even though he believes he's factually guilty,
Yeah.
and whatever. And you don't get that in a more regimented corporate type practice.
Especially when you started, like law practice management was not a well-beaten path. What do you think about like alternative careers within the law? Because for many years it's been, something that, it's not a real legal job. Like lawyers have had for many years, like a very strict idea of what it is to be a lawyer. But especially right now, even just with the internet and the cloud and all the kinds of computer tools that are available, there's so many different routes for
I
lawyers
know.
to take.
Well, and we kind of can't even define what practicing law is as a profession. I mean, how are we supposed to, deal with all those nuances and whatever? I've been working with Access to Justice. I've been appointed to our state's Access to Justice Foundation, and so I've been working on that a little bit. And I think one thing that I would like to say about Access to Justice is information is not legal advice. When you see somebody in the courthouse that looks lost, and you say, "Are you lost? Can I help you?" and you tell them what courtroom they're in, and ask them what they're there for, and you tell them, well, this is how it'll proceed. That's not legal advice. That's not practicing law. That's just sharing information. Now, if you tell them what they're supposed to do, then you've crossed the line into practicing law, which isn't necessarily bad unless a professional liability case comes out of it somehow or something like
Yeah.
that. I've dealt with a lot of different lawyers. I dealt with the first law firm, a well-respected law firm that got scammed out of $500,000 in the wiring thing, and and all those kind of things. And it's just interesting that most lawyers are good people. I know the public doesn't believe that, and I know we've got a lot of evidence not supporting that right now. But lawyers are generally good people, and they generally want to work to help people. The problem is the real money is in corporate and big firm practice rather than non-contingency small firm practice.
Something else that it's a bit of a trend right now from what I've been hearing is that some state governments are pulling back on access to justice and legal aid, making it more difficult for regular people who are just working a job and they have something come up and they don't even know what it is and they're trying to get more information or just to get some help about that problem to be able to pursue that and get some legal help. You've seen this come up before. Why do you think it's like this? Like, why is there that disconnect, like you mentioned, between, I guess, the answer could be easy. It's where the money's at. But you would think that there'd be enough with the millions of people that have legal needs that need assistance. And especially that a lot of those millions of people vote, that there'd be greater support for them.
Luckily, we have strong case law in the criminal defense context that provides for appointed counsel. When you're about to be evicted from your home, when you've been battered by a spouse, there's a whole lot of situations where you need help right then. And lawyers can really have a difference. I had a lady who I barely remembered her name show up in my office just to tell me she wanted to come by and tell me it was her 18th birthday. She knew I wouldn't remember or whatever. But I was court appointed to represent her as a juvenile in a terrible family situation. And we negotiated her way out of that, put her in a great place, a family that would foster her. And she got her high school degree. And she just wanted to come tell me, boy, you can't, that's worth more than money. You know what I mean? She felt that kind of happiness. The problem with solo and small firm practice is lawyer fees have gotten so high that it becomes really difficult. I mean, if I was to take a magic wand, I'd say we start out by redesigning the old courthouse, and the first floor should look more like an airport or a bus station with signs telling everybody where to go. And the
Right.
short stuff, the court clerk and things you're going to do right here, don't put them on an elevator somewhere else. Have that all done on the 4th floor. Have a kiosk. Every other public place has a kiosk where you can go ask questions. That is like totally against our norms.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of things we could do to make things better for access to justice. But I think lawyers are also starting to recognize, Tom, and this is pretty important. Many of these delays, not all of them, but many of these delays are because the courts are clogged with pro se matters. And if you could get a way to handle those more efficiently, it opens up the courts for the other types of matters. And so when you're trying to improve access to justice, yes, it's great to help somebody out in a terrible situation, but really, some of these people shouldn't be in court at all. I mean, they could have to go to court, but if you went to Vegas and you got married and you lived together 2 days, and now you've been separated for a year, there ought to be an administrative way to go down and handle that by yourself.
Right. Right.
And technically there is, and I, one of my areas of expertise is unbundled and limited scope legal services. Oklahoma has a really good rule in that regard that basically says if you want to provide unbundled services, just put your signature block at the bottom so the judge knows who did it, but say I'm not entering an appearance. So it's a very simple rule to allow you to help people and whatever. And probably we should be doing more of those.
And for anyone who's not familiar with unbundled, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but basically that you can agree to provide a limited service that doesn't provide full representation for everything under the sun and the liability that goes with that.
Right.
Focus on one thing and just get that done.
And normally the way that works is document drafting. I'll draft the documents for you and then we'll both proof them. But, if you're drafting divorce papers for people and they're going to go represent themselves, you know what the most valuable thing for them? It's not what's in your divorce papers. It's telling them where to park at the courthouse, and how it's going to happen, and what days they do uncontested hearings. There's a whole lot of things that the lawyer could still bring value in addition to just drafting the paperwork.
Yeah. What to wear, what the judge is going to be like, what upsets that judge.
There are metal detectors you're going to go through. Be warned.
Well, with your appointment to the Access to Justice Commission
Foundation. We no longer have a commission. It's a foundation, so it can raise money.
Yeah. So to the Access to Justice Foundation, like, what are you trying to accomplish with that? What are some of the things that you would love to bring to reality?
I don't have time to go into that. I would encourage everybody to Google Oklahoma Access to Justice Foundation. They probably have 12 ongoing projects right now.
Wow.
The lady we brought in from Georgetown, from another state, they kind of kidded when they hired her. So, well, I guess your first job is to raise your salary. She now has 4 full-time staff. So they are doing a ton of projects, and they're doing a ton of projects and helping people be aware of their rights. They do some light lobbying. It's more informational things, but sometimes when they're doing those landlord-tenant bills, they just need somebody from the tenant side to say, hey, have you thought of what this would mean? And that type of thing. So we'll see. I think we've seen remarkable improvements, and we will continue to see more, but like every state, we have a long way to go. And when state money gets divided up, as you pointed out earlier, Tom, often the court system, the judicial system is not the first priority. You'd think that there'd be constituents lobbying for improved court functions.
Yeah.
It's just not what happens.
Yeah. Well, turning the page on that to something on a lighter note, now that you've retired, I'm curious, like what have you gotten to do? What are some of the things that you've gotten to embrace and do that you weren't able to before?
Well, my wife has encouraged me, and we went with a group of friends, all from LP, as a matter of fact, on a cruise of Iceland, Greenland, and northern Canada. And I would encourage anybody to do that. Iceland was such a great country to visit, and a couple other shorter cruises. And then in my lack of time management, we bought a new dog. So she is a huge Akita puppy. She is gorgeous, but she has to be walked every morning. And my wife pointed out that I should be walked every morning too. So it's a good match. But no, I'm still staying active in the ABA. And I've just finished being the guest editor for a ABA Law Practice magazine, the finance issue that'll be coming out in a few days. And that was really interesting. Of course, now that is only available to ABA members unless you haven't been to the ABA website in a long time, and then you get back to your free reads. But I would encourage some people. The ABA has really gotten a reduced fee for solo and small firm lawyers now. So if you're just a solo lawyer, it's not that much. And because the law practice division now turns over all its content to the ABA, the webinars, the articles, the magazines, and whatever, it's pretty valuable. I'd say I would support the ABA in that regard, particularly right out of law school. It's like next to nothing to join the ABA, as I recall.
Yeah. Yeah, they have pretty good discounts when you're just graduating. Well, let me ask you a question for solo and small firms. And when it comes to AI, what are some of the questions you're getting, or what do you think they should do about it?
It's unavoidable. The first lesson of AI in my world, now I know you have a lot of sophisticated people listening to your podcast, but if you're good at something, AI will help you be better. If you're not great at something, you may be the one who is in court talking about hallucinated briefs. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what it comes down to. And I'm not as sympathetic as I would be about these would be. I mean, I'm an old school lawyer. I would never file a brief in court without having read every case. I mean, end of story. Haven't really practiced law in 30 years, but still. And so I think that's a lot of it. I think a lot of it too is them. But I think one of the reasons the firms aren't admitting it, you've seen guys in court now under oath denying they used AI when anybody could look at it and tell they used AI. I have some concern about how they build that work to the client
Yeah.
and whether that's really what they're protecting. If you spend 50 minutes with AI and you build the client 5 hours, that's unethical no matter what set of ethics rules you operate under.
One thing I want to ask you is that when it comes to AI right now, almost every thought, every press release you see is about how it could replace people. Basically, is like labor replacement, and even for lawyers, lawyers, and especially some of the students that I teach in law school are worried about finding a job or having a job, and it seems to be just such beating the drum about this and a misconception, a wrong way of looking at it, to my mind. And I think your career is a testament to it. It's really about the people, and it's about how we work together through these problems. And that's just too far a complex and human thing to just boil down to some computer program.
Solo and small firm lawyers in particular, now all lawyers, but solo and small firm lawyers spend a lot of time meeting with the individuals who may or may not be their clients and talking with them about their problems. And that's why I'm not worried about lawyers being replaced at one level, because people want to talk to me about their problems. Now, some people love to do queries and searches and all these other things, and I
Yeah.
understand that, but they also want to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable. So, I think the solo and small firm lawyers, there's a threat. The threat's pretty simple, Tom, and I'm probably a little bit more negative than you. But if one AI adoption for one lawyer allows you to produce twice as much work, end of story. And 10 lawyers do that. At some point, there's got to be a this work is gone, right? I mean, it's not out there for other lawyers to get. And so I think the people connection is how solo and small firm lawyers are going to survive, just like you pointed out. You know, if you've gotten a little older and you hadn't been going to the local football games Friday night in Oklahoma, you need to get back out there. If you, if you dropped out of the chamber, then maybe you need to get back out there, or the Kiwanis, or whoever it is, because people like to work with people they like, and people, at least for a while longer, still trust other people more than they trust machine output.
I agree with you 1,000%. And I think it's just too short sighted of people right now that they see what's in front of them with AI and they think that they can delegate everything over to it. And, you know, ultimately it's people that are hiring lawyers, it's people that have the legal problems to start with. And we're the ones that not only can use our judgment to guide them, but there is still this thing called professional responsibility, and I don't see any AIs right now that are taking professional responsibility for what they're doling out. So there's still some measure of at least need structurally, like for malpractice, but there's also like getting that sense of confidence from someone that only comes from a person.
Oh, I completely agree. We mentioned solo and small firm lawyers. Coincidentally, the same week this podcast is going to publish, I wrote an article for Attorney at Work that's going to publish this week. Basically, I told solo and small firm lawyers, I said, why not use AI to do some of the things you've been meaning to get to for a long time and haven't done it? Like prepare an organizer for people you do wills for to take home to help organize their information. You get it
Yeah.
prepared one time. Chat GPT made an enormous first draft of that. I couldn't believe just to say,
Right.
do me that. And other things like your attorney-client agreement, run that through AI and let it reduce it to an eighth grade reading level. There's a lot of things that you can do that don't involve putting client information at risk. I'm still at the point where if you're a solo and small firm lawyer, unless you're a technology hobbyist, you're probably a little safer to stay with AI either through Microsoft or through the practice management software solutions, just because you have somebody else kind of running things. Now, I know others will say that's by far too expensive and there's other ways to do it now, and we may reach that right now. But if I was a solo and small firm lawyer and I was going to try to do an AI experiment, I'd want to have some help desk that was on call, not to be doing it all myself.
That leads me to the last couple questions I ask my guests. The first one has to do with, over your career, you've clearly been doing a lot and juggling many things. What advice, if any, do you have for the audience about how do you maintain a work-life balance?
Yeah, I can't say that I'd be the very best person to ask that to, but I think the key with work-life balance is recognizing that of all the systems, of all the tools you have in your firm, you're the most important one. And you're the one that keeps, whether it's a big firm or a small firm, you're still the one that keeps your area operating. You've got to set aside the time for yourself. And if you find yourself not doing it naturally, like I said, I'd always had little dogs you didn't have to walk. I was like, oh, I got to walk now a mile or so every morning, Turns out I enjoyed it. Now, not this month.
A little hot out, yeah.
I think you've got to focus on taking care of yourself. I was terrible on not eating well. I didn't like to exercise. I tried to do that a little bit more. But if you don't plan it, if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen, because something will happen every day at a law firm to take up all your time if you let it.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth? I 100% agree with you. Well, the last question I have for everyone, and I really love to hear your answer about this, is at the end of the day, after doing everything, your long career where you've got to touch many people, their lives, what makes it worthwhile for you?
A lot of lawyers don't like to retire because they miss the power. I didn't really have that much power in my job. It was more of a collaborative job. But to be honest, getting to help people every day and actually give them real answers, like the Control Z guy, or whatever,
Yeah.
It was fulfilling, I found. I liked helping people. And it was my personality too. Even when I was one of the small firm before I did this, when I'd forgot something new with the computer, would I keep it in my office to make my practice better? No, I'd go tell the other lawyers, hey, look what you can do, whatever. So it worked out well for me. There's a lot of state bars that have practice management advisors. And I would note that if somebody's listening to this and you don't know whether your bar has one or not, you should check it out, because they are valuable people who are paid to do work for you. And I did that for a lot of years and really enjoyed it. But after your retirement, I'm not really planning on going back.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I think that they were so lucky to pick you 30 years ago, because you're just the right man for the job.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. And I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. We haven't gotten acquainted earlier, but I've read your stuff for years. And like you said, you'd read mine for years. So it's all great. And good luck with your future endeavors.
Well, thank you. And for the people that are watching and listening, how can they keep in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way, because my email address is posted on it, is my blog. If you just type Jim Calloway blog into Google, you'll find my blog, and that'll get you there. I'm a member of the Lex Blog Network.
Thank you so much again. Stay cool. And for all of you watching, thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.